All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to talk about Joe Joyce and what's left for him in his professional career after this morning's fight against Lusnikov. We're also going to talk about Murat Gassiev, him running through Kadiru, and what's next for him because he's there calling out Ajit Kabayel and Moses Atauma. So we're going to talk about those. I do apologize that this video is, 12 or so hours late. The fights were early this morning for me. I didn't get up and watch them. I was watching England versus Norway, and then I watched Argentina take on Switzerland. And then following that, I watched Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway, which was an absolute shit heap. If you want to hear my opinions and thoughts on that fight, there is a video live. But after all the action, because it was a jam-packed full day, like I've been watching every single World Cup game. I'd backed England this morning to win that game. And you know what? Coming into the tournament, I said, I think that Morgan Rogers should take that position that Jude Bellingham's in. Not they chose Jude Bellingham and proving me drastically wrong because that guy is scoring every single game and is by far, for me, player of the tournament. Like if England go to the grand final, if England go and win it, he is by far player of the tournament. Like he is almost carrying that England team. He's scoring so many goals. Great. But we're here to talk about Joe Joyce. We're here to talk about Murat Gassiev. Let's start with Joe Joyce. He loses to Artem Susnikov by a round 11, basically retirement. You know, the referee waves it off, but Joe Joyce, he had enough. He was telling his opponent, he was telling the referee, I've had enough. He was shaking his hand. He was shaking his head. He was saying, I'm finished. I'm finished. At first, I actually thought, I was like, when fighters get hit and they get hit well, and then they just sort of wave it off. It's nothing. That's nothing. That's what I thought he was doing at first. But then he was actually like saying, no, I've had enough. His hands were down. He was just resigned to throwing in the towel. He was done. He was finished. And it was a weird ending to that fight because although I think Lusnikov was winning that fight, I think over the course of the fight, he by far landed a better, cleaner, crisper punches. He was less fatigued. And for the smaller guy, I thought, definitely beating Joe Joyce. I have no idea what the scorecards were showing. Obviously, we were in round 11 or 12. It would have been interesting to see what the official scorecards were because that fight was so labored. It was so close. There were so many interactions that were in the phone booth, neither one really landing cleanly. From different angles of that ring, you're probably seeing a whole lot of different things. So it would have been interesting to see what those scorecards were, considering Joe Joyce threw the towel in the 11th round. Like if he had just tried to stick with it for another, like he hadn't hit the canvas. Yeah, he was getting peppered in that 11th round, but he was still standing. He probably still had something to offer. Susnikov wasn't the biggest hitter in the world, so it would have been interesting to see what those scorecards were, whether he should have just tried to have stuck it out and made the referee make that decision. But self-preservation kicked in. He had had enough. He was fatigued. And Artem Susnikov gets the victory. But as good as Susnikov looks, like he's a bit undersized for the heavyweight division. He's got some good sort of technical ability, right? That fight wasn't the highest level of fighting you're ever going to see. And I'm sure if you put Susnikov in there with any top heavyweight, he's going to get blown away. The undefeated record probably, hides his true ability. But in terms of Joe Joyce and what's next for him, because he's really what I wanted to talk about in this video. Susnikov, great win for him, biggest win of his career, so on and so forth. I still don't really rate him that highly. I think if he's in there with a top dog, he's going to get blasted away. So Joe Joyce. We're now talking about a guy at 40 years of age. He was Olympic silver medalist, arguably, by many people's standards, should have been the Olympic gold medalist, but officially he is the Olympic silver medalist. So if we look at, September of 2022, all right, September of 2022, he is 15-0. He's Olympic silver medalist. He has KO'd Daniel Dubois, Carlos Takam, Joseph Parker. He's the British. He's the Commonwealth. He is the European heavyweight champion. And like I said, undefeated with 15-0, lots and lots of promise. Fast forward a few years, now he's 40 years of age. We're in the year of 2026. His last 6 fights, he's lost 5 of them, including 2 stoppage losses to Zhilei Zhang back-to-back. He then beat Cash Ali, but who gives a fuck? You beat Cash Ali. He then goes and loses a decision to Derek Chisora, loses a decision to Filip Hrgovic, and to today where he gets stopped by Artem Susnikov. This guy's done. Let's be honest. I think Joe Joyce calling it a day in round 11 almost pushes that argument further that he's done at a professional level. Like, I don't really want to see Joe Joyce back in the ring again. I don't see a point. I think if you were going to beat anybody, you were going to beat the guy that you were in there today with. It was a slugfest. It wasn't the greatest watch. It was quite a slow fight. You fatigued and you lost it, and you actually gave up. And I think that just shows where he is mentally, because a Joe Joyce 4 or 5 years ago wouldn't have given up that easily. A Joe Joyce would have kept pushing through. No matter what the pain is, he would have known that there was only 4 minutes left. He would have said, let's find a way to get to this decision. And we hope to God that it goes our way. I think the choosing to, all right, I've had enough. Let's finish it up here. I'm too fatigued. I'm taking too much damage. I just don't want to be here anymore. Shows to me that Joe Joyce at a top level, or even at any professional level, is done. And for me, I don't personally want to see him back in the ring. I don't think there's a need. There's a, like, what's he going to go for? At 40 years of age, you're 5 out of 6. The only winners against Cash Ali. What's left there? You're not really going to get a big payday. People probably aren't interested in seeing you there. And to be honest, you're just going to get yourself hurt. You're clearly not in the right state to continue fighting as a professional, right? He's got a great character. He's got a good fan base over there in Britain. But for me, the story of Joe Joyce, the Olympic silver medalist, achieved quite well at a professional heavyweight. Nothing too elite, but I think you can hold yourself in good standing. The amount of belts that he won that were, he's the Commonwealth, the British, the European champion. And for me, you call it a day. All right, Murat Gassiev stops Peter Kadiru in round 6. The towel was thrown in. Look, Peter Kadiru, he had a few flurries, maybe, 3 or 4 punches every second round or so, but he was a walking punching bag. The guy came in on 3 days' notice, was far and widely outmatched technically, by skill, by power, by speed, by precision by Murat Gassiev. It was one-way traffic. He was a standing, walking punching bag for Murat Gassiev. It was easy work. The question is, why did it take Murat Gassiev 6 rounds to get rid of him? That's probably the biggest talking point. Obviously, it is hard when you've got a guy that's covering up, that's not offering much. They are heavyweights, and you're trying to land a punch on the bigger person. It isn't as easy as, all right, we'll just go in there and knock him out. I get that, but it still did take 6 rounds. Peter Kadiru offered absolutely nothing, and I guess the biggest talking point is, look, the guy came in on 3 days' notice. We weren't expecting much. What's next for Murat Gassiev? Because he is the outright WBA heavyweight champion, and he's calling out people like Kabayel and Atauma. Now, if we look at the top 5 as the WBA, we've got Atauma, Miller, Fury, Joshua, and Aratunian. Realistically, you're probably saying the only one there that he might beat is Jarrell Miller, because Jarrell Miller is hit and miss. He is sometimes very, very good, sometimes very, very bad. He comes in overweight. He's unpredictable, and he's getting there in age. So you could say, all right, if you threw him in there with Jarrell Miller, you might be able to just move around enough to outbox him and get a victory. You're getting absolutely destroyed by Moses Atauma. Tyson Fury, even what he's throwing up these days, I still think he beats you. Anthony Joshua, I think he beats him. Arutunian, he's very, he hasn't been tested. So you could probably make an argument to say Murat Gassiev versus Aratunian. You're going to back Murat Gassiev. But out of the top 5, that's the only one. And then you get Nelson Heiser, you're going to lose to him. Oh, not necessarily. I think that's probably on the same level as Aratunian. It's not a guarantee either way. Filip Hrgovic, you're definitely going to lose to. Big Gug, you're going to lose to. Dana Pero, I think, is a close fight. I'm not sold on Pero, but to just talk about those top 5 names, it's arguable that you don't beat any of them, but you have to verse one of them. So I guess if you are in Murat Gassiev's shoes, you say, all right, which one's going to make me the most money? And the one that's going to make you the most money is Moses Atauma or Ajit Kabayel. If you're not going to take on Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, which is not going to happen. Those two guys are, looking at big money fights. But you can entice an Ajit Kabayel, you can entice a Moses Atauma into an easy fight. There's a world title on the line, and guess what? You're going to get a big payday. And I think that's the only thing he's really looking at, because you can't tell me for a second that you saw anything today from Murat Gassiev or over the course of his career to say that he's going to beat many of those names in the top 5, if not many of the names in the top 10. And look, that sounds so disrespectful of Murat Gassiev. Like, he won the title in style. That was a great knockout that he got. Today, he was in there with a standing, walking punching bag. It was quite easy work. But he's not going to beat any of those guys that he called out. So if he's going in to just cash in this belt, then yeah, go for one of those. If you're trying to hold on to that belt, then you've got to try your best to get a Jarrell Miller. You've got to try your best to get Aratunian. I think Aratunian has a fight coming up anyway. So look, a weird day of fighting, a hectic day of sport for me. I'm actually losing my voice right now, so this video is not going to go for much longer. But to sum up, Joe Joyce, I don't want to see him back in the ring. I don't think anybody else really wants to see him back in the ring. If you do want to see him back in the ring, please tell me why. or what you saw today that says, all right, Joe Joyce has still got it at 40 years of age, 5 out of 6. For me, it's done, it's finished. Go sit on the sidelines with Derek Chisora because he's another one that should just pack it in. Look, he might want to come out for one big last payday, maybe. I'm surprised that Joe Joyce, for whatever reason, didn't claw his way to taking on Murat Gassiev in the main event. I think that fight there was an option there. I feel like there was an option there for Joe Joyce to take the heavyweight title fight. That's probably the fight he should have taken, considering he lost this one regardless. At least that would have been a world title fight. And you would have had an excuse as well. You would have said, I wasn't prepared for this guy. There's my excuse. But for me, there's no excuses. You went in there, a tough opponent, an undefeated opponent, but somebody that I think was there for the taking, somebody that I think you could have beaten on your better day. I think a Joe Joyce most definitely a few years ago beats Artem Suslikov. So from what I saw today, wrap it in. Guys, let me know what you guys think. If you haven't already, go check out that Conor McGregor video. We're going to make some more videos during the week, so make sure you are subscribed. Like the video. I'm out of here, guys. See ya.